Hi, welcome to our channel of IGNOU Audiobooks, Indira Gandhi National Open University, School of Vocational Education and Training, SOVET, Master's Degree Programs, Master of Science, Information Security, MSCIS, Semester 4, MSc 033 Web Application Testing and Audit, Block 1 Web Fundamentals and its Security, Unit 4 Recent Attack Trends in Web Infrastructure Security Web Application Firewalls 1.1 Introduction to Web Application Firewall. Firewalls technology have continuously evolved since they first came in existence in the late 1980s and have significantly improved the overall security posture of organizations. Firewall technology, like other technologies, has changed continuously to adapt to new technologies and threats. Web application firewalls, WAFs, were developed in the early 1990s. Traditional firewalls were unable to handle new threats, so a WAF evolved to respond to these security threats. As web applications were using authorized protocols, such as HTTP, these threats were attacking the applications and underlying infrastructure over those protocols. Hackers were attacking over trusted protocols to directly compromise the web applications and steal sensitive information by effectively bypassing the security of traditional firewalls. Modern web application firewalls have many different implementations, and each implementation has its own cost-benefit matrix. Figure 1. Web application firewall in action. Look at the screen. Stateless WAFs versus stateful WAFs. A WAF is deployed between an organization's web applications and the requests coming from remote clients through the internet. Web application firewalls monitor these requests and generate responses. They can block incoming and outgoing data packets for a web application. WAF attempts to filter potentially harmful packets with contents that attackers can misuse and enable web exploits. A WAF service provider offers various WAFs like a cloud-based solution, a hardware system, a server plugin, system or software, or a filter. Earlier WAF products are known as stateless WAFs, as these firewalls were able to filter the traffic based on a set of static rules to analyze possible threats reaching the web application servers as inbound requests. Using some pattern recognition techniques, stateless WAF makes guesses based on predetermined application and attack behavior models. For example, these WAFs may check how quickly the requests are coming in, whether they originated from the same source, and other behavioral metrics that might indicate malicious activity is underway. Stateless WAFs could perform such tasks much more rapidly than their human counterparts, but they were not adaptable to successfully handle new evolving attacks. A continual game of cat and mouse ensued in which attackers, upon discovering that their initial form of attack on a web application had been unsuccessful, would simply devise a new form of attack behavior that the WAF had not seen before and could not prevent. Then, when the WAF eventually received new rules that could ward off this new attack variant, the attackers would come up with yet another method for evading detection. The next generation of WAFs was stateful WAFs, adding more agile defenses compared to stateless WAFs. Stateful WAFs can enrich collected data with relevant context and analyze a web application's current threat landscape. Since they take a broader, more contextual view into account, stateful WAFs are better at detecting critical issues such as DDoS attacks and low and slow attacks that attempt to undermine security by flying under the radar. 1.2 Traditional firewalls versus web application firewalls. Traditional firewalls protect your IT infrastructure and environments against external attacks by controlling access to certain areas. These firewalls allow or block the network traffic, inbound and outbound, based on predefined rules configured by the administrator. Figure 2. Difference between traditional firewall and WAF. Look at the screen. A WAF secures the web applications by looking into the Hypertext Transfer Protocol (HTTP) traffic used for interaction in web applications. This mechanism is different from the mechanism used in traditional firewalls, where a firewall barrier is created at the external interface. Like a traditional firewall, WAF also sits between the external world and web applications and analyzes all HTTP traffic in both directions. Using a set of defined rules, it detects malicious HTTP requests and blocks them from being delivered to the users or web applications. This way, business-critical web applications and web servers are protected against attacks at the application layer and any zero-day threats. This protection is important for web applications as businesses are continuously expanding and transforming into new digital initiatives, which makes new web applications and application programming interfaces (APIs) vulnerable to new attacks. A traditional firewall usually protects a secured local area network from unauthorized access and reduces the risk of attacks. Its primary objective is to protect the secured local area network from less secure external entities and control the communications between the LAN and external entities. In the absence of these firewalls, any internal device holding a public IP address is accessible from any external network, and there is a potential risk of attack. 1.3 Block list and allow list in WAFs. Sometimes, these lists are called blacklist and whitelist. A block list contains known untested IP addresses and URLs. Access to these IP addresses and URLs in the block list is blocked, therefore, the firewall does not allow the content to be downloaded from those sites. An allow list contains known trusted IP addresses, URLs, host names, email addresses, and file hashes. Content downloaded from addresses on the allow lists can be trusted, and we need not inspect them for malware. Allow list allows users to access or download content from trusted or safe sources. But sometimes our assumption may be wrong, and in such cases, if the system detects that a source in the allow list is no safer, it is removed from the allow list and added to the block list, thus decreasing the chances of false positives in the future. Block lists prevent the downloading of content from locations that are in the block list and are known to be harmful and suspicious. The WAF permits the creation of custom allow lists and block lists and allows you to add items manually to these lists. Both lists are configured on a WAF or attached server. The lists are inspected for each communication in some order. A file hash is a unique signature of a file, and it is generated using a hashing algorithm. You can add custom allow list and block list file hashes for filtering. Firewalls using any of the two, block lists or allow lists, have advantages and disadvantages. Thus, a new hybrid model of firewall evolved, which implements both lists, 1.4 network-based, application-based, and cloud-based WAFs. When deploying a WAF, there are three possible options: deploy on the network, deploy on the web server, and deploy on the cloud. WAF characteristics can differ based on the deployment location. When deciding the deployment location for WAF, users need to consider the website's configuration and availability and the WAF characteristics. Network-based WAFs are the extension of a traditional firewall implementation. It has some benefits and drawbacks. Network-based WAFs are usually hardware-based, and since all components are local within one unit, it reduces the communication latency and some of the negative performance impacts. But the biggest drawback of these WAFs is that their procurement and implementation are most expensive. These WAFs require additional storage, and the cost of maintenance of physical equipment is high. A network-based WAF has the following characteristics. Its operation does not depend on the operational environment of the web server. its operation does not depend on the number of the web servers that constitute the website. When deploying a WAF to the existing website, the reconfiguration of the network is required. If the WAF supports the HTTPS, it is possible to inspect the HTTPS too. By using the WAF, it is possible that the availability of the website may decrease. In addition to them, the commercial WAF service has the following characteristics. The website operator does not have to deploy a WAF on its own network compared to deploying a WAF on its own network. The impact to its web server or network configuration is small. Application-based WAFs are usually installed closer to the web application. Sometimes, it is installed on the same web hosting platform where web application is installed. An integration of WAF and web application is feasible. The main advantages of this integration of WAF with web application are improved performance and possibility of customization. For example, a popular WAF mod security, which is an open source firewall, can be integrated with Apache Server as a software module, and the web application running using Apache can make use of all the WAF features, and any overhead can be handled by the local server. The deployment cost of implementation of this type of application-based WAF is very low. But still, some scalability and flexibility issues for larger organizations need to be taken into account before going for application-based WAF. A server-based WAF has the following characteristics. Its operation depends on the operation environment of the web server. If multiple web servers are used, we need to deploy WAF to all web servers. There is no need to reconfigure the network when deploying a WAF to the existing website, since the HTTPS packets are processed, encrypted, and decrypted on the web server. The HTTPS transactions can be inspected even if the WAF does not support HTTPS. By using the WAF, it is possible that the performance of the web server may decrease. Cloud-hosted WAFs are low-cost, low-effort application firewall implementation for organizations willing to go for a turnkey product. Deployment of cloud-based WAFs are very easy, as such implementations only need setting up of a simple DNS, which redirects the web application traffic to the cloud-hosted WAF. These services are available on monthly or yearly subscription basis. There are some limitations of these firewalls in terms of performance and customization. Because of these limitations and drawbacks, cloud-based WAFs are usually a viable stopgap product that can be deployed rapidly. Cloud-based WAFs are an affordable option for web application security as it is continuously updated to handle new security threats, and you need not worry about new security threats or invest addition funds. Involvement of a third-party cloud for security solution of web application is not a good choice. Some features of the cloud-based WAF may be a black box for user. 1.5 How does a web application firewall WAF work? A WAF are having a set of stored and defined rules called policies. These security policies are framed and stored in a firewall so that the firewall can protect the web application against threats and vulnerabilities by filtering out malicious traffic. For WAF, the value of the firewall is measured in terms of speed, features of policy updation and modifications, and response time for varying attack vectors. To handle a DDoS attack, WAF policies need to be quickly modified. The web application firewall continuously scans the web application's all the GET and POST requests received to identify and filter malicious requests and activities. The most important thing about WAF is that it analyzes both the header and the content of each packet to identify and block the illegitimate requests. Intelligent WAF firewalls sometimes challenge the requests to make the actor prove they are users and not a bot. when web application firewall finds the vulnerabilities in the web application itself. The web application firewall can patch them to automatically block these type of attackers and malicious actors like bots, attack IP addresses, attack-based inputs, etc., from exploiting such vulnerabilities. This action of WAF gives the web developers enough time to fix the vulnerabilities in the web application. 1.6 Attacks that WAFs prevent. 1.6.1 Cross-site scripting, XSS. Cross-site scripting, XSS, attacks are script injection attacks where some malicious script is injected into web pages being accessed. One way of creating XSS attacks is to inject malicious script in the form of a client-side script using a web application and then send this malicious script to another end user. Some flaws in web applications allow these attacks to succeed in creating XSS attacks. These attacks are quite widespread and can happen whenever a web application takes some input from a user without validating the input or encoding it. An attacker sends malicious scripts to an unsuspecting user using XSS. The browser is unable to detect these malicious scripts and continues to execute these scripts. By getting these malicious scripts executed on Usre's browser, attacker can gain access of cookies, session tokens, or other sensitive information stored by user browser. These scripts sometimes create entire HTML web page. Cross-site scripting, XSS, can be created when a web request for some data is made and the data enters a web application by some untested source. Some data is included in a dynamic web page being sent to a web user without validating the content. If it contains some malicious script data, when a server generates a web page and sends it to a client web browser, it may contain malicious content sent in the form of a JavaScript segment. It can also include other types of scripts like HTML, Flash, or any other scripting code that browser accepts and executes. The different forms of XSS-based attacks are possible and most of them include transmitting confidential data like cookies or some session parameters to the attacker, or redirecting the user to web content controlled by the attacker, or performing some other malicious operations on the user's machine under the guise of the vulnerable site. XSS attacks are classified into two broader categories: stored XSS attacks and reflected XSS attacks. Third type of less popular XSS attack is DOM-based XSS attack. Stored XSS attacks. In stored XSS attacks, the attacker injects malicious contents directly into web pages and related web contents, and these contents are permanently stored on the target servers in form of a database, in a message forum, visitor log, comment field, etc. The victim, when accessing web content, receives the malicious script from the server as a result of various access requests made by the victim. Sometimes, stored XSS attacks are also known as persistent XSS attacks or type I XSS attacks. Persistent XSS attacks can have a form called blind cross-site scripting. This attack happens when the attacker's payload is stored on the server and then it is reflected back to the victim through the backend application. An example of blind cross-scripting is feedback forms on the web application. The attacker submits the malicious payload using the feedback form, and when the admin sitting at the backend of the web application opens this submitted form, the malicious payload gets executed. It is hard to confirm the blind cross-site scripting in a real-world scenario, but a tool known as XSS Hunter can do this. Reflected XSS attacks. Reflected XSS attacks are triggered when the injected script is reflected off the web server in form of server-generated response such as an error message or search result, and it contains the part of the input earlier sent to the server as parameters for the request. The victim receives the reflected XSS attacks through different routes like email messages or links to some other website. When a malicious link is clicked by the user, or the user submits a maliciously crafted form, or the user just browses through a malicious website, the injected malicious code travels to the vulnerable website, which reflects the attack back to the user's browser. The browser treats the code as valid and executes it, as it is coming from a trusted server. Reflected XSS attacks are sometimes referred to as Type 2 XSS attacks or non-persistent attacks. 1.6.2 SQL injection. SQL injection, SQL, is carried out by injecting malicious SQL statements and getting them executed at the server side. These injected SQL statements can access data from the backend database server in a web application. Attackers exploit SQL injection vulnerabilities in web applications to bypass the security measures of the web applications. Attackers bypass the authentication and authorization process of a web application and gain access to the sensitive SQL database and can do manipulations like insertion, deletions, and modifications in the database. All commercial and open source SQL databases are vulnerable to these SQL injection attacks. Attackers can gain unauthorized access to entire databases where sensitive data like customer databases, personal information, trade secrets, intellectual property, etc. SQL injection attacks are treated as the most prevalent and most dangerous for web applications and are one of the oldest attacks on web applications. The Open Web Application Security Project (OWASP) organization have listed injections in their OWASP Top 10-017 document as the number one threat to web application security. In order to execute an SQL injection attack, the attacker first finds the vulnerabilities in user inputs on web pages and web applications. A web page that is having an SQL injection vulnerability takes some inputs from the user and uses these inputs directly to construct an SQL query. The attacker carefully creates an input pattern, which is called a malicious payload. This malicious payload is the key part of the injection attack. The attacker injects the malicious payload into the content which is eventually executed as malicious SQL command on the database server. Example of SQL injection: let a web application be used to pay utility bills online and it requests the user's account number in a web form and then sends the entered account number to the database server to find the associated account record. Here is the web application server constructing an SQL query string using the account number received as a string from the client browser. The SQL query might look like this. Select from customers where account num is equal to user input account num. This SQL query works perfectly for users who are entering their account number correctly on input form, but it is an injection vulnerability that can be exploited by the attackers. For example, if attacker decided to feed an account number of 1 is equal to 1, that would result in a query string of select from customers where account num is equal to 1 is equal to 1, as 1 is equal to 1 is always true. Sending this SQL statement to database server will return all the customer records instead of a single customer record. Sometimes, SQL commands are used to invoke some operating system commands. In these cases, SQL injection attacks have some serious consequences. Attackers steal the user credentials from the database using SQL injections. After getting the credentials, the attacker can impersonate other users. If an attacker is able to get the credentials of the database administrator and impersonates the administrator with all database privileges, a serious problem arises. The attacker can use SQL commands to delete records from a database, even drop tables or even take database backups. These alterations to the database could affect the web application availability until the database is restored. Restoration of the database may not be successful as backups may not cover the most recent data. In financial web applications, an attacker could use SQL injection to modify the balances, change transaction amounts, modify account balances, or transfer money to their account. In some database servers, operating system commands can be part of SQL queries, and attackers can attack the internal network and operating system by using SQL injection attack. The attacker uses an SQL injection as the initial vector and then attacks the internal network behind a firewall. 1.6.3 Cookie poisoning. Cookies are created when the user's browser is accessing some website. These cookies, stored in the form of a small file, contain some personal information, such as a user ID, user preferences, or a list of web pages visited by the user, and are stored on the user's computer. Later, a website server reads these cookies to use information stored in cookies. Attackers can manipulate or forge a cookie for the purpose of bypassing security measures of the web application, or can send misleading information to the web application server. This act of manipulating or forging cookies is called cookie poisoning. Using cookie poisoning, an attacker manipulates stored cookies for storing misleading fake information, and later this misleading information reaches the web server, breaching the firewall security. Web applications use cookies to store and monitor some important browsing information for a user. Attackers can get access to these stored cookies of a target website and then tweak information stored in these cookies to gain unauthorized access to the user's information. Attackers can also trick the web server using manipulated cookies, which the server can treat as a newer version of the originally created cookies. Cookie poisoning attacks can be dangerous for both web servers and client-side applications and can affect the communication between both. Different forms of cookie poisoning. Man-in-the-middle cookie hijacking. The attacker can bypass the web application security and gain access to the communications taking place between the client web browser and the web server. Attackers try to steal the cookie information being transmitted. Once cookie information is available, the hackers can manipulate the information, can steal the user information for some personal benefit. Client-side cookie poisoning. The attacker can gain access to cookies being transmitted and manipulate these cookies before it reaches the web server. Attackers can manipulate these cookies by just pressing the F12 key and then using the GUI details to manipulate the cookies. Dedicated HTTP requests can also be created for some advanced level attacks. Cookie hijacking using buffer overflow. Buffer overflow opens another scope where the attackers can gain personal benefits by manipulating cookies. Buffer overflow attacks can be carried out by attackers using manipulated cookies. If a web server is running on a platform with security loopholes, then attackers can gain unauthorized access to the information stored in cookies and they carry out a buffer attack. Defense against cookie poisoning. Unfortunately, there is no single technique to ensure complete security against a cookie poisoning attack. Users will have to rely on some preventive and defensive measures to guard against cookie poisoning attacks. Use only HTTPS websites, as these websites use secure protocols like SSL to encrypt all the communication between the client and the web application server. Make sure that session identifiers are created by only trusted and reliable software. The use of locally designed identifier generators is not advocated by security experts. Use some powerful security suite to regularly scan your devices. This action will strengthen the security walls by eliminating all the system vulnerabilities. Chances of manipulation of client-side data are high, so it is recommended not to go by it blindly. 1.6.4 Unvalidated input. Unvalidated input is a serious problem, and attackers exploit this vulnerability to take control to execute operating system commands, steal sensitive data, corrupt system disks, and more. Validating input and interprocess communication needs to follow some general rules. Common types of input validation, vulnerabilities, and what to do about them are described. A general rule is to ensure the validation of all input values received and make sure that the data is valid and reasonable. For example, an image file whose size is 300 by 200 pixels, but when received, its header contains information that the image is only 300 by 10 pixels. When a program attempts to read and process such an image file, it allocates a buffer of an incorrect size, and later a heap overflow attack or other problem is created. These are the reasons behind proper input data verification before and during processing. This process is popularly known as input validation. Any ordinary user accessing a website or web application can be an untested source, and when these users send the input to the server, it is possibly a potential target for attack. Input from these untested users is usually in the following forms: text from input text field, command passes through a URL. This is used to trigger a program, audio, video, image files provided by user or other processes and read by the program, command line input, and data read from an untested server over a network or any untested data read from a trusted server over a network. Hackers look at these sources of input going to the program and try to change it to malformed data. If the program starts misbehaving or crashes, the hackers then find ways to exploit the program. For example, unvalidated input can be used to exploit the target server to take control of operating systems, corrupt users' disks, steal data, and more. 1.6.5 Layer 7 DDoS. It is also known as an application layer DDoS attack. It is a distributed DDoS attack that generates HTTPS traffic just to consume the resources of the system and hamper the ability to timely deliver the contents or harm the web application owner. The Web Application Firewall (WAF) is very effective in protecting the web application against Layer 7 DDoS attacks and other attack vectors. Some most common Layer 7 attacks. The most common DDoS attack at the application layer is HTTP flooding, which has 4 different types. 1. Basic HTTP floods. As the name suggests, these attacks are the simplest and most common HTTP flooding attacks. The attackers try to gain access to a webpage web resource repeatedly using the same range of IP addresses, user agents, and referrers, smaller in number than volumetric attacks. The server fails to handle the sudden flow of a large number of requests and eventually crashes. 2. Randomized HTTP floods. In a randomized HTTP flooding attack, the attacker uses a wide range of IP addresses, randomized URLs, user agents, and referrers to carry out more complex attacks. Botnets may be deployed to control the devices which are already infected with malware. These botnets are used to send flooded GET POST requests to the server. 3. Cache bypass HTTP floods. Cache bypass HTTP flooding is a form of randomized HTTP flooding attack. Attackers use various strategies to bypass the caching system of the target web application, and a major portion of server bandwidth is used up in serving these requests. One example of a cache bypass attack is one when attackers are searching for uncached content or a generic dictionary, and this searching consumes server resources and causes downtimes. Cache bypass flooding attacks are one of the smartest attacks. 4. WordPress XMLRPC floods. In this attack type, attackers leverage the simple WordPress pingbacks of several other WordPress installations as a reflection for orchestrating the flooding attack. Randomized HTTP flooding and cache bypass HTTP flooding are the most common even among the HTTP flooding attacks. 5. Slowlories attacks. This is the easiest, most common, and the most lethal attack among all application layer DDoS attacks. The lethalness and viciousness of this attack type lie in its underlying simplicity. Slowlories attacks do the opposite of the volumetric attacks. Instead of bombarding the server with many requests, the server is sent payloads slowly, hence the name slow lories, while keeping the connection open for a long period of time. By launching this attack, even in very low volumes, the server connection pool can be exhausted in waiting to receive the full request from the slow lories attack payloads, thereby preventing it from serving other legitimate users. The key to protecting against Layer 7 attacks. As mentioned earlier, it is critical yet difficult to identify Layer 7 DDoS attacks because of their sneakiness and seeming to request legitimacy. To address these attacks, the DDoS mitigation solution must provide always-on, instant protection, including real-time alerts, allowing custom rules and policies, including the services of certified security experts, provide security analytics to be prepared for future attacks, and provide real-time visibility to the risk posture. But most DDoS mitigation solutions tend to focus singularly on volumetric attacks and do not offer such comprehensive security against Layer 7 attacks. Make sure to choose a DDoS protection service that offers an intelligent and comprehensive managed WAF such as Aptrana so that you can ensure your web applications are always available. 1.6.6 Web scraping. Web scraping is similar to web crawling, and software is used to browse the content of sites of interest and subsequently extract data from visited pages. The purpose of web scraping is to search and extract the required data from websites, usually for business requirements. For example, web scraping can be done on a business website by competitors in order to extract the products, services, and prices they offer. There are two major impacts of web scraping. The first impact is the business impact. It collects sensitive information from the websites, which was not meant to be disclosed in such a manner. The second impact is bandwidth. The scraper's activity can consume even 50% of the website bandwidth, forcing the site to pay and increase its bandwidth. 1.6.7 Parameter tampering. In web applications, the client and server exchange parameters to perform the desired operation. The parameter tampering attack is to manipulate the parameters in messages being exchanged between the client browser and the web server. These parameters are usually used to modify application data like user credentials, permissions granted to users, or some records stored in the server database. Sometimes, the information is stored in form of cookies, hidden form fields, or URL query strings, and is used to enhance the functionality and control in web applications. Parameter tampering attacks are performed by users who want to exploit the vulnerabilities in the web applications for their own benefit, or performed by attackers who wish to attack a user using man-in-the-middle type attacks. In these cases, tools like WebScarab and Paros proxy are used to carry out the attack. The success of parameter attack exploit the errors in integrity and logic validation mechanisms, and this exploitation can result in other consequences including XSS, SQL injection, file inclusion, and path disclosure attacks. Some examples of parameter poisoning attack. Example 1. A typical example of a web parameter tampering attack is the modification of form field parameters. Consider a case when a user selects form field values, combo box, checkbox, etc. on an application page. When a user's selected values are submitted, they could be acquired and arbitrarily manipulated by an attacker. Example 2. When a web application uses hidden fields to store status information, a malicious user can tamper with the values stored on their browser and change the referred information. For example, an e-commerce shopping site uses hidden fields to refer to its items as follows. In this example, an attacker can modify the value information of a specific item, thus lowering its price. Example 3. An attacker can tamper with URL parameters directly. For example, consider a web application that permits a user to select their profile from a combo box and debit the account. http://www.sampledemo.com/default.asp profile equals sign 546 debit equals sign to 500. In this case, an attacker could tamper with the URL using other values for profile and debit. Other parameters can be changed, including attribute parameters. In the following example, it's possible to tamper with the status variable and delete a page from the server. http://www.sampledemo.com/savepage.asp?nr equals sign to 13 status equals sign read. Modifying the status variable to delete the page. http://www.attackbank.com/savepage.asp?nr equals sign to 13 status equals sign dale 1.6.8 exploiting buffer overflow vulnerabilities. A buffer overflow, also known as buffer overrun vulnerability, happens when an application uses a fixed size buffer but data input in buffer exceeds the buffer size. If not handled properly, the additional data may overflow into adjacent memory space and can corrupt or override the data space used to hold other input data. A buffer overflow is a very common coding mistake done by programmers and can be easily exploited by attackers to gain access to your system. In order to completely mitigate the buffer overflow vulnerabilities, the programmer needs to understand what is buffer overflow and what damage it can do to the web application. Programmers need to learn the techniques used by the attackers to successfully exploit these vulnerabilities. Buffer overflow vulnerabilities are exploited by attackers by simply overwriting the memory space used by an application. This can cause changes in the execution path of the running program and can trigger a response that may damage files or confidential information can be exposed. The attacker can try to insert extra code at the end of some input or send new instructions to the web application to gain control of the application or system. If attackers are able to know the memory layout of a program, they can intentionally input larger size input that the buffer cannot handle, and extra input overrides the memory space that stores some executable code. In this situation, the codes are replaced by attackers' malicious code. One example of such type of attack is when an attacker overrides a pointer that is pointing to some other object or memory area and gains control over the program. Types of buffer overflow attacks. Stack-based buffer overflows are a very common type of buffer overflow vulnerability. They may leverage memory used by a stack that exists only during the execution of a function. Heap-based attacks are harder to carry out and involve flooding the memory space allocated for a program beyond the memory used for current runtime operations. What programming languages are more vulnerable to buffer overflow? C and C are not having built-in safeguards against overwriting and accessing data in memory, and this is the reason why these two languages are most susceptible to buffer overflow attacks. Many operating systems like Mac OS X, Windows, and Linux use codes written in C and C. Languages like Perl, Java, JavaScript, and C# use proper built-in safety mechanisms that minimize the chances of buffer overflow attacks. Developers can write codes to have protection against buffer overflow attacks or can use only those programming languages that have features of built-in protection. 1.7 Common cyberattack vectors. 1.7.1 Compromised credentials. Most common type of user access credentials are username and password pair. Compromised credentials mean a case where unauthorized entities gain access to user credentials, such as usernames and passwords. Phishing attacks are used to steal user login credentials when users fall prey to some phishing attempt and enter their login credentials on websites. When these compromised user credentials are with the attacker, they can have and to all the resources. Enterprises can identify such suspicious activities by employing some monitoring and analysis tools. The amount of risk posed by these compromised user credentials depends upon the level of access it provides. If privileged access credentials are compromised, then the risk is at higher side as the intruder gains administrative access to devices and systems. Other than human beings holding credentials, other systems can also hold credentials and need authentication. Such systems can be servers, networking devices, and security tools. In the hands of an intruder, these machine-to-machine credentials are used to allow communication throughout the enterprise, both vertically and horizontally, giving almost unfettered access. To avoid this, the following steps can be taken. Credentials are usually compromised when very common usernames and weak passwords are used by users and systems. It is important for the enterprise to have very effective secure password policies that ensure the required strength of the passwords. Sharing of passwords across various services makes those applications that share these credentials vulnerable because if there is a breach in one service or application, all the applications are affected. Therefore, it is advised not to use the same password to access multiple apps and systems. Involvement of a trusted second factor for implementing two-factor authentication reduces the chances of a security breach that may occur due to compromised credentials. 1.7.2 Weak and stolen credentials. Use of weak passwords and reuse of the same password for different devices and applications open doors for initial attacker access and propagation. Recently, some malware attacks such as Mirai focus on this type of threat for both managed devices and IoT-connected devices. Some applications and protocols send user credentials over the network and pose a significant security threat. Attackers connected to these networks can easily steal and misuse these stolen credentials for lateral movement. For example, attackers perform the target attack and are able to steal Active Directory credentials and then propagate their attack into the enterprise payment network. Do this to avoid it. Track password hygiene and use across your entire enterprise to identify high-risk users and their devices. 1.7.3 Malicious insiders. A malicious insider is often an unhappy employee who either leaks sensitive private company information or exploits the system's vulnerabilities. The malicious users who have access to company-sensitive data and networks can inflict extensive damage through their privileged misuse and malicious intent. Do this to avoid it. Keep an eye out for disgruntled employees and monitor data and network access for every device and user to expose insider risk. 1.7.4 Missing or poor encryption. Data encryption is a popular trick to encrypt normal data into encrypted data that can be accessed only using a secret key, and only people holding the secret key or password can decrypt the data and read it. This encrypted data is known as ciphertext, and unencrypted data is known as plaintext. The motive behind this data encryption is to ensure the confidentiality of digital data during its storage in computer systems and its transmission using the internet or other computer networks. Strong encryption is required when data is at rest, in transit, or in processing. Lack of encryption or use of poor encryption techniques leads to the storage and transmission of sensitive data in plain text form or in form of weak cryptographic ciphers. Any adversary who is able to get access to the stored data or able to intercept the communication or processing could decrypt the weak cipher using a brute force approach and gets access to sensitive data. Do this to avoid it. Don't rely solely on low-level encryption or assume that following compliance means that the data is securely encrypted. Ensure that sensitive data is encrypted at rest, during transit, and in processing. 1.7.5 Misconfiguration. Misconfiguration is when there is an error in system configuration. For example, if setup pages are enabled or a user uses default usernames and passwords, this can lead to breaches. With Setup App Server configuration not disabled, the hacker can determine hidden flaws, and this provides them with extra information. Misconfigured devices and apps present an easy entry point for an attacker to exploit. Do this to avoid it. Put procedures and systems in place that tighten your configuration process and use automation wherever possible. Monitoring application and device settings and comparing these to recommended best practices reveal the threat of misconfigured devices located across your network. 1.7.6 Ransomware. Ransomware is a form of cyber extortion in which users are unable to access their data until a ransom is paid. Users are shown instructions for how to pay a fee to get the decryption key. The costs can range from a few $100s to thousands, payable to cybercriminals in Bitcoin. Do this to avoid it. Make sure you have systems in place that protect all your devices from ransomware, including keeping your operating system patched and up to date to ensure you have fewer vulnerabilities to exploit and not install software or giving it administrative privileges unless you know exactly what it is and what it does. 1.7.7 Phishing. Phishing is a cybercrime tactic in which the targets are contacted by email, telephone, or text message by someone posing as a legitimate institution to lure individuals into providing sensitive data such as personally identifiable information, banking and credit card details, and passwords. It continues to be one of the most effective social engineering attack vectors. Some phishing schemes are incredibly intricate and can sometimes look completely innocent. The Office of Personnel Management (OPM) hack demonstrates how phishing can defeat almost all layers of traditional security such as email gateways and endpoint controls. Do this to avoid it. Measuring web browsing and email click-through behavior for users and devices provides valuable risk insight for your enterprise. When in doubt, it's best to call the organization you received the email from to determine if it is a phishing scam or not. 1.7.8 Trust relationships. Trust relationships are concerned with the level of trust that exists between users and systems. Different domains are connected based on trust relationships. Users need to log in once on one domain and gain access to resources of other domains based on the trust relationship between the two domains. These two domains are in a trust relationship, and the first, that authenticates the user, is trusted by another domain that grants permission to access its resources. The domain can authenticate users and gives access to its resources based on the trusted domain without authenticating the user again. One common security breach happens when the credentials are compromised on the trusted domain. In such case, all other domains having trust relationships with this domain get breached, wreaking havoc. Applying zero trust security practices, trust relationships are managed to limit the impact or completely eliminate the impact damage of an attack. Best example of zero trust security practice is Google's BeyondCorp. Using BeyondCorp, access control is shifted to BeyondCorp. BeyondCorp allows secure access to resources from virtually any location without using any VPN connection. It was an internal Google initiative for their employees to access resources from untested networks without using a VPN. Now, BeyondCorp has become a practice by Google employees, and they gain access using user-based and device-based authentication and authorization for Google's core infrastructure and corporate resources. Single sign-on is required by BeyondCorp, and well-defined access control policies, access proxy, and user-based and device-based authentication and authorization are used. Access to services is not determined by the network from which the user connects. Rather, access is granted based on contextual factors from the user and their device. Access to services is authenticated, authorized, and encrypted. 1.7.9 Zero-day vulnerabilities. Zero-day vulnerabilities are security flaw in web applications that are identified and exploited by attackers, and we security team do not have patches to fix these flaws. It is called zero-day vulnerability as there is no time elapsed between the security attack happens and the vulnerability is detected by attackers public. These attacks are increasing at an alarming rate over the past few years. Zero-day vulnerabilities can only be fixed using security patches provided by the vendor, therefore it is necessary to mitigate these vulnerabilities before an attacker exploits them. To mitigate zero-day vulnerabilities, vendors develop and deploy scripts that enforce secure configurations, alter registry values and close vulnerable ports. Having the red team write a proof of concept (POC) exploits is a possible solution to mitigate zero-day vulnerabilities. 1st July 2010 brute force attack. The hacker attempts to crack the password or get the encrypted data decrypted successfully using a trial-and-error type attack. It is identical to a brute force attack performed by a thief to open a digital locker by trying numerous different combinations until one finally works. The brute force technique works across all attack vectors mentioned here. It can be used to find out passwords, break weak encryption, and so on, so it is not technically an attack vector on its own. 1.8 WAF use cases. 1.8.1 Protect websites and web applications. Web application firewalls are deployed primarily to secure web applications and websites interacting with users using HTTP, APIs, and some means. WAFs are treated as the first layer of defense for any web server. They are programmed to analyze the HTTP traffic, detect malicious activities, block known and unknown attacks, prevent data leaks, lock down vulnerable systems, control access to ports and URLs, and mitigate the risk of inadequately configured servers. A WAF provides all the benefits of a regular network firewall and more. It can detect advanced attacks, enforce security policies, and ensure SSL security mechanisms. 1.8.2 Comply with security and regulatory standards. Threat prevention is not the only use case for web application firewalls. Some industry standards need to be complied with by the websites. A website that stores the credit card details of its customers needs to comply with the Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard, PCI DSS, as non-compliance with these standards has serious consequences. Data breaches or credit card frauds in uncertified websites and web applications are heavily fined. PCI DSS mandates are to be followed strictly and websites must need to pass some security assessment. These requirements are complied with either by going through a code review, which is usually expensive, or by setting up a WAF. The use of a WAF is the quickest and most efficient way to comply with these types of regulatory requirements. Not only do credit card companies demand standard compliance and increased security levels in web applications, but other regulatory standards like HIPAA and SOX also have similar requirements. 1.8.3 Controlling bots and preventing DDoS attacks. A bot is an application that is designed to do some specific tasks. Bots run automatically according to their instructions programmed without manually starting them up every time. Bots running on remote systems imitate human users' behavior. Usually, bots do repetitive tasks much faster than human users can. WAFs can help in controlling bots' access to web applications. Bots can perform well as bad activities, thus bots can be bad or good. The good bots do not disturb normal activities, but the bad ones try to delete, alter contents of the websites, try to send spam content, steal confidential data, abuse APIs, install malware, perform brute force attacks to crack passwords, or trigger a DDoS attack. Bots can cause extensive damage by amplifying the effect of exploits and can also overutilize resources, which causes unexpected costs. WAF can be useful to block repeated access from bots using fine-grained rate limits and CAPTCHA rules. 1.8.4 patch vulnerabilities. Despite the best practices and coding techniques used to secure a web application, there will always be the possibility of some vulnerabilities in the application. When these vulnerabilities are detected, it takes some time until a possible solution is found and a new patch is generated and released. Getting the patches on time sometimes take time if the codes are owned by a third-party vendor. These vendors sometimes take several days or weeks to design and release a patch. For instance, the most popular CMS platform WordPress is one of the most hacked platforms also. WordPress has a monthly schedule to release security patches for vulnerabilities reported during this period. Some of its patches and plugins have longer release schedules. Some organizations use codes that are not managed by any party, and this creates another problem altogether. If the source code is not available, it is impossible to design and release the patches. In such cases, a WAF is the only way to secure the web application. 1.8.5 Intrusion detection in real time. To protect web applications in real time, web administrators and security personnel need to monitor the traffic in real time to detect real-time attacks and take action accordingly. This task is difficult especially for distributed systems, as the logs are scattered among different locations and can be accessed through many heterogeneous interfaces. This is the reason why intrusions are not detected immediately and may take hours or days to get detected. A WAF can act as a central point for storing the logs and security metrics, and these logs and metrics are having a particular focus on security. Using these stored logs and metrics, the security administrators can analyze the traffic and detect real-time attacks and subsequently take necessary action. WAF logs play a key role in diagnosing and assessing past attack attempts, and this knowledge plays important role in designing and implementing additional security measures. 1.8.6 Enforce content policies. As web application firewalls protect the applications by inspecting and filtering HTTP packets, the administrator can set the rules to control the HTTP connections based on their contents. WAFs can filter and block certain file types or file contents from passing through the system. WAF's configuration can be according to the originating country to serve the differentiated content, also to serve contents which are dependent on geography. WAFs can be configured to implement regional locking and comply with export restrictions. Thank you. Subscribe to our channel for more updates, and we will see you with the next chapter.